Good morning. My name is Ellen Wiss, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Duluth and a trained and certified League of Women Voters moderator. On behalf of the LWV of Duluth, I want to thank the candidates for their willingness to participate in government and this general issues pre-primary forum for Judicial District 6. The forum will be presented on PACT-TV and linked to the League of Women Voters of Duluth website. The League posts complete and unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts and edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. You may share this forum in its entirety. The League of Women Voters believes that an informed citizenry is the foundation of effective democracy. The League is open to membership for women and men who are interested in nonpartisan civic participation. It is a volunteer organization working at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed at this forum are those of the participating candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters, and sponsorship of this forum is not a league endorsement of any of the individual candidates participating. The League of Women Voters of Duluth realizes that creative and innovative policies and practices are forged out of diverse points of view. We believe diverse perspectives are necessary for responsible and representative decision-making. We will sustain our commitment to welcome and facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our work. We strive to include people from a mix of abilities, backgrounds, and in all of our activities. At this time, I would like to introduce the candidates for the Judicial District 6. Gunnar Johnson, Shawn Reed, John Schulte, Gerald Wallace. Candidate Raukar will not be present but has submitted an empty chair statement in his absence. Our forum will begin with the candidates giving a 2-minute opening statement followed by a questioning round. The questions have been vetted by a League of Women Voters of Duluth Forum Committee and questions submitted by League committees and by citizens on the League website. Candidates were not given the questions in advance. Each candidate will be given up to a minute and a half to provide their responses to the questions. The questioning round has been set up so that each candidate will be asked questions in a rotating order. After the question round is completed, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement. I will begin by reading Pete Raukar's empty chair statement. Greetings, engaged citizens. I'm sorry I cannot be present for this important forum, but I'm currently on a family vacation in Finland, which coincides with helping coach my son's soccer team that is playing in the Helsinki Cup. I first want to thank you all for taking the time to watch this forum and learn more about the candidates for the 6th Judicial District Court Judge vacancy. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this momentous event, as well as congratulate and thank all my opponents for their candidacy. It takes great courage to run for office, and it is important that many people take part in the process to give the great citizens of the 6th Judicial District quality options. I have a limited amount of time, so I'm not going to go through my resume in great detail, but I encourage you to please visit raukrmnn.com, the campaign's Facebook page, Raukar for Minnesota, or my LinkedIn page, Pete Raukar, to learn more about me and my qualifications. It is especially important that we have a strong judiciary. Judges have a significant impact in our communities by making important decisions relating to criminal charges, children in need of protection, matters of custody, and civil disputes among citizens and businesses, to name a few. Having practiced before over 100 judges as a civil litigator and spoken with many district and court appellate judges about their jobs, and spent several years working for the Michigan Court of Appeals, where I assisted the court in writing a plethora of opinions in various civil and criminal matters, I know the qualities needed to be a good judge. I believe that I possess these qualities. I have open-mindedness and well-rounded understanding of the law to consider the position and arguments on each side of any given dispute that would come before me. I also have the patience, demeanor, and right temperament to work through matters with prosecutors, public defenders, and private counsel, as well as help pro se litigants through what can be an intimidating process. If elected, I promise that I will utilize my passion and drive to put in the time and energy that are needed to be a judge to the citizens of the 6th Judicial District. In closing, I want to again thank the League of Women Voters for holding this forum, as well as for its existence in general. I really appreciate the organization's work to educate and empower women voters, as well as inspire future women like my teenage daughter, Piper. I hope you will vote for Raukar during the August 13th primary. Thank you for your consideration. If you have specific questions I can answer, please email me at raukarmn@gmail.com. Okay. So we will begin with the opening statement by John Schulte.
Thank you. My name is John Schulte. I would also like to start by just thanking the League of Women Voters for this forum and for the opportunity to speak with the voters of the 6th Judicial District, which of course includes Carleton, St. Louis, Lake, and Cook counties. The one time in this forum I'll speak for others is I think that we were all thrown a real curveball when the Honorable Dale Harris decided not to seek re-election, which created a very rare open judicial election with multiple participants. This is something that hasn't happened in the district in, I believe, 14 years. But it created a great opportunity, an opportunity to serve and an opportunity to do a challenging but very important job. In an election year, you hear a lot and think about, obviously, the executive branch of government, certainly the legislative branch, but the judicial branch is something you kind of don't think about until you come into contact with it. And if you come into contact with it, it probably means something has kind of gone awry, whether it's contact with the criminal justice system, family law, child protection. So we are tasked with making decisions for people who have probably fallen on some hard times, very important life-affecting decisions. And I like to think through the decisions we're tasked with making, we can help get people back on track. But that's hard, and it's a big responsibility. I've been an attorney for 28 years. I've practiced in family law. I've been a guardian litem. I'm a mediator. I'm a big believer in that. Custody evaluator, and most importantly, I served as a judicial referee or a type of magistrate judge for 8 years. So I've worn the robe. I know what it takes. You have to know the law, which we all do. You have to be fair and impartial, but most importantly, you have to make sure people feel they've been heard. You have to treat people with courtesy, respect, and have that demeanor. You can't have a bad day where you're not in a good mood, because everybody deserves your very best. It's a tough job, but I'm ready to do it. Thank you.
The next statement will be from Shawn Reed.
Good afternoon. My name is Shawn Reed, and I'm running for District Court Judge. I want to introduce myself, but before I do that, I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Duluth for this primary election forum. I also want to thank my fellow candidates for their participation. And I also want to thank the voters of the 6th Judicial District for allowing us to engage with them in advance of this very, very important race. Now, I grew up and went to school in Esco and spent much of my early years in the Iron Range. The 6th Judicial District is my home. Now, I'm married to my wonderful wife, Julie. She's always been my rock, and she continues to be my rock during this campaign trail. We have an adult son, Tyler. Tyler, together with his wife, Nikki, has provided or given Julie and I our most important job and job title. We're now grandparents to Nora. Julie is Nana, and I am proudly known as Pop Pop. I attended the University of Minnesota Duluth and then William Mitchell College of Law, graduating with honors. I returned to Duluth and have been practicing law since 1997. I'm a trial attorney and a hearing officer. As a trial attorney, I spend almost every day in court dealing with criminal and civil cases. In criminal law, I have experience as a prosecuting attorney, a special prosecutor, and a private defense attorney. In civil law, I handle a range of cases, including divorces, high conflict custody cases, and civil suits. My extensive practice has taught me to analyze cases from every perspective. In my role as a hearing officer, I make tough decisions based off of facts and law that directly affect people's lives. And as with any job, experience is crucial. I have the necessary experience to serve as your next judge from day one. If you find yourself before a judge, you cannot afford to wait for justice. You cannot wait for that person to learn on the job. As they say, justice delayed is justice denied. I look forward to seeing the voters on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Thank you. The next statement will be from Gerald Wallace.
The question gets asked, why me? And I would tell you the reason it's me and maybe not some of my colleagues sitting next to me is because I believe I have the necessary experience to do the job as a district court judge. I've been an attorney in private practice for 10 years. I've represented clients in criminal defense matters, family law matters, probate matters, estate planning matters, and real estate matters. I have extensive experience, just as all my colleagues do. I have experience ensuring my clients receive due process. That same obligation would be mine as a district court judge. I have ensured my clients have felt heard and represented in a court of law in every courthouse in this district. I have represented clients in most major case types that are heard by district court judges. The 2023 district court report indicates that about 80% of the cases that are heard by district court judges in a given year are cases that I've handled. I believe I have the necessary experience and training to do the job. I believe I do the job every day in advising my clients as to what a court would find persuasive, what a jury will consider when deciding a case, and how a matter may be best resolved with a prosecutor or with an opposing party. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this forum on. I want to thank the other candidates for frankly having the courage to do this, and that would conclude my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person will be Gunnar Johnson.
Hello, my name is Gunnar Johnson. I am an attorney in Duluth here, and like the rest of these guys, I am running for judge of the 6th Judicial District here in Duluth. I want to ask you, as we start this forum, for your vote on August 13th. It's a very important election, and we really want people to get out and vote in the primary, and if you could consider me, I would appreciate that. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, and as we get into this forum. I have been working very hard at running for judge here. I've been up on the Iron Range, went to 4 different parades all across the Iron Range, meeting people and talking to voters and walking the streets to see what is going on in other parts of our district. Been to the fair over in Proctor, the St. Louis County Fair, where my daughters used to go as 4-Hers years ago, putting together Facebook pages and websites. Running for a campaign like this is a lot of hard work, but as an attorney, I'm not afraid of hard work and putting in the time necessary to make my case. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, Ellen for moderating this, and PACT-TV for putting this together. It's nice to be back here at PACT-TV. I was the Duluth City Attorney for 12 years, and I interacted with PACT-TV quite a bit. I did their franchise agreement, in which gets their funding. And anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about my background and experience as we get into the questions here. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move to those questions solicited by the organizing committee. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. Candidate Wallace will answer the question first. I'm sorry. Candidate Johnson will answer the question first, followed by candidate Wallace, candidate Schulte, and candidate Reed, just so you can be ready. I'm going to ask the question once, but if you want it repeated, please ask. Candidate Johnson, what experience or training makes you a good candidate to be a judge?
Ellen, thank you for that question. I have been an attorney for about 30 years. And let me just talk about my experience in training, and I'm going to start old and move to the new if I can get there within the time period I have. I came to Duluth in 1986 to go to the University of Minnesota Duluth. One of the things I was very proud of when I left the University of Minnesota Duluth is I was awarded the Sear Duluth Award, which is most people don't know about it, but it's a really prestigious award for service to the community. Don Ness, Don Ness and Fred Friedman and a lot of other prominent people in our community were awarded that when they were students, and I was proud to be one of those awardees. I went to law school at the American University in Washington, D.C., where I worked for the Department of Justice as a law clerk during my law school time. I was the Duluth City Attorney for 12 years. I worked up on the Iron Range for the Attorney General's office for 7 years doing economic development work in all of the counties and for the past 3 years, I have been the Hermantown City Attorney and a private attorney here in Duluth. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wallace.
As I said in my opening statement, 80% of the cases that are heard in the judicial district are cases that I handle on a day in and day out basis. I have major felony criminal experience. About a month ago, Monday, I started voir dire in a murder trial. The week before that, I was in a misdemeanor criminal trial. Those are the types of cases that are overwhelmingly heard in this district. I believe my experience as a defense trial attorney equates me with all the necessary legal issues to ensure that those matters are heard promptly, are heard effectively, and that due process is guaranteed for all parties. The training I received, I have a law degree from the University of Dayton in Ohio. I have an undergraduate diploma from Hamline University in St. Paul. I'm a high school graduate from right here in Duluth. I was born and raised in Duluth. And I have, I believe, all the same experience, qualities, and training as anybody else who is seeking this office. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schulte.
Thank you. As I also alluded to in my opening, I attended the University of Minnesota Law School, graduated in '96, so 28 years ago. I practiced family law, landlord-tenant. Early in my career, I did do some criminal defense work. I've done a little bit of everything. But I think most significantly, as I also talked about, I worked in a position called a judicial referee for 8 years, from 2014 to 2022. Referees were extensively used in the cities for specialized kind of cases, family law cases or probate cases. Then they started, many districts, hiring referees to handle small claims court, orders for protection, harassment restraining orders, certain family hearings, even some minor criminal and traffic hearings. So I put on the robe and sat on the bench every day for 8 years. I know what it takes to do the job. I know how tough it is, but also how fulfilling and rewarding the job can be. I've been to the boot camp that they have for new judges in Minnesota that's colloquially called Baby Judge School. I actually was sent there and attended. So I think the biggest thing I have going for me, because we're all experienced, is I have done a variation of the job, very tough, high conflict cases, a lot of self-represented parties, and I have shown, these attorneys have appeared in front of me, that I have the ability, the demeanor, and the knowledge to do the job effectively, and I very much would like to go back.
Thank you. The next question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't forget about me.
I put that little mark there, and okay. I'm sorry, Candidate Reed.
Thank you. Last but not least, correct? Well, and thank you for the question, and thank you for remembering me. I've been practicing law since 1997. I went to William Mitchell, graduated there with honors. For a short while before returning to Duluth, I practiced for a brief while in the Twin Cities. My current practice, when people ask me what I do, I'm a trial attorney. I'm in court nearly every single day for nearly the last 27 years. I practice both criminal law and civil law. My criminal case practice is really unique. I'm a prosecuting attorney from the city of Hermantown and Proctor. I'm also a criminal defense attorney. So that requires me to look at every case from both sides and apply the law. I approach my civil cases in the same manner, and I'm handling the same type of high conflict cases, the cases that we see in court on nearly every calendar. The other thing is being present in the courtroom. That's how you learn to do this job. You have to be there, you have to be watching other people, you have to be watching the judges. Given my experience as a trial attorney and as a hearing officer, I'm ready to do this job on day one. And we can't afford to let people wait for us to learn how to do this job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question, Candidate Reed will answer first, followed by Candidate Schulte, Candidate Johnson, and Candidate Wallace. Who are your judicial role models and why?
All right, thank you for that. I think my judicial role model is retired Judge Florkey. I've appeared before him countless times, and the primary reason is he had a certain judicial demeanor about him. He brought ease to people that were appearing before him, but he was ready to keep moving the case forward. And he demonstrated to me the impact that a judge has on an individual. And we saw that when he was running his specialty courts. You'd see someone that would enter the specialty courts in a very poor, bad position, and as they worked through the program, it's life-changing. I was in the courtroom watching the specialty court one day, and there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom hearing these stories and hearing the success. And I'll confess, I was one of the persons in the room that didn't have a dry eye. And so I know how judges can impact persons' lives. And Judge Florkey stands out as one of the role models that I have. I'd point out other judges that I appear before on a daily basis, but that probably wouldn't be appropriate. So I'm choosing retired Judge Florkey for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schulte?
Thank you. And, you know, I will echo some of what Mr. Reed had to say in that Judge Florkey was a great example of somebody with the type of temperament and demeanor who could make people very comfortable, put them at ease, and he also talked about specialty courts, which I hope we get to talk a little more about because they really do change lives. I'll talk a little bit about some folks who are there now, in the sense that I think we're very fortunate in the 6th Judicial District in that we have a deep an excellent bench, one that we're all obviously hoping to become a part of here. And I'll even speak to the person that we're vying to replace, Judge Harris. I think Judge Harris is a great example of somebody who strikes that right balance between being sort of no nonsense when he needs to be, but also with that right balance of sort of kindness and approachability and thoughtfulness in how he approaches his decisions. Judge Neal, I think, is also an excellent example of somebody who really strikes a nice balance, because there is a balance, because you're making hard choices, you're holding people accountable. Court is not a warm and fuzzy place, but that doesn't mean that a good judge should add to that sort of intimidation factor or make it more uncomfortable for people than it already is. And I'm not singling anyone out who I didn't mention. We have a great and deep bench here.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson.
Thank you. It's fun to not be the first person to talk because I get to think of all the names that have been impactful in my career. First off, I'd like to mention Judge John Oswald, who was really the judge that I was before when I first started as an attorney back in the 90s here in Duluth. David Sullivan was a judge that I did a 2-week trial in his courtroom. It was an arson case, and we absolutely destroyed his courtroom because it just smelled like fire by the time we were done. Judge Mark Munger, I used to practice with him at the Clure, Eaton and Butler firm years and years ago. He ran for judge and is kind of the model for what I'm trying to do here today. Judge Mike Kuzo also was a pathfinder for me in running for judge. I think of Heather Sweetland, who appeared before many years and really helped bring me along as a young attorney. And finally, I would like to mention Judge Neo and Judge Hankey. Both of them worked for me as the city attorney, and I'm very proud that they have gone on to serve on the bench and have really done a great job, and so I'm proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wallace.
I would say Judges Munger and Judges Flurkey. I mean, I could cite judges, opinions that I've read and things like that, but in terms of how you conduct a courtroom, how you connect with people, how you ensure that a hearing is fair, how you make that difference in people's lives in a criminal court when it's necessary or in a civil court when it's necessary. I saw Judge Flurkey do that on a day in and day out basis, and I was always impressed with his ability to connect with people sometimes experiencing the worst days, months, or years of their lives, and how that connection could change the trajectory of them and of where they were going. And I would say Judge Munger, because I always felt like every time I was in that courtroom, it was a fair hearing, and he heard everybody, and he heard what everybody had to say, and he considered everything that was put in front of him. And one person I didn't mention, and nobody else mentioned, but I think I will mention is the late Judge Tarnowski. I would mention her because I think that she was an innovator in the area of family law. I think that's an area that is a large case type that's heard in the courthouse is usually high conflict, and her ability to get people to see the other side's perspectives as she was conducting her hearing, and frankly her compassion for the mentally ill and how she conducted her mental health court, I think all three of those people are models for me as I move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go first to candidate Wallace, followed by candidate Johnson, Reed, and Schulte. What do you perceive is the greatest obstacle to justice, and how would you address this if elected?
So I get the hardest question. I think what I perceive I think it is, I think there are issues that are related to public health in this state and in this country, and access to opportunity in this state and in this country. I think those are to me, the biggest perceived issues. I think that there are needs to have a better, more robust public health system, and I think that the court system is used kind of as, you know, an emergency room for social issues, and we do the best we can with the resources that we have to address those issues, be it a person's mental health, be it a person's chemical dependency issues, be it, you know, financial issues or issues between themselves and another person. The courthouse is where we go to solve those problems, and we apply the law to the facts that we have in front of us and try and make the best decision we possibly can. And so what I perceive to be, though, are those issues, are public health issues, and I think the court system is used to help those. Now, you know, how would I fix it is the second part of the question. And some of the solutions, I think, are outside the role of a district court judge. I can't hand wave more financing for public health. I can't order more treatment counselors to suddenly appear. I can't order access to better, more supportive housing. But if you're talking about, and at least in a criminal court setting, helping people resolve those types of issues, and again, that's the major matters in a district court here. Those are the types of things that need to be addressed in my mind. I could probably talk at this issue for longer than a minute and a half, so thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson?
Yeah, so the question is, what are the largest
What do you perceive is the greatest obstacle to justice, and how would you address this if elected?
Right, and there are, I mean, the court system is a system in transition. There are a lot of obstacles to justice. One of the things I do in my practice now is I'm a hearing officer for the HRA, which is the Housing and Redevelopment Authority here in Duluth. Some of the biggest issues that I see there are issues related to mental health and addiction. And let me give an example. The last case that I worked on, the individual that had a Section 8 voucher that was being discussed was severely mentally ill. He was flipping me off during the hearing. He was making comments, sexual comments about my mother. And as a judge, it's easy to get sidetracked with something like that. But you have to focus on the individual and their needs. And what we did is we stayed that hearing for a period of time to try to stabilize the individual and to get him some outside legal assistance so that he could make a fair case and have due process through this process. So those are the obstacles that I see as the most prominent, and that's kind of how an example of how I've handled it in the past. And this is something we're going to see whichever one of us becomes a judge. It's going to be a prominent issue as we deal with people on the court. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Reed?
Thank you. I think the greatest obstacle to justice, I'm going to term it a different way and call it issues with access to justice. Access to justice means those of us who can get into the courtroom with representation. We see that both in the criminal and civil cases. In the criminal world, we have a public defender system which does provide public defenders or an attorney to help represent people that are at the risk of loss of liberty. The problem with the system is that the threshold for qualification is really low. So in other words, if you don't fit within a certain economic bracket, you don't qualify. And there are a lot of people that do not qualify for public defenders. Now, your options then are to go out and hire private counsel. And private counsel, it's expensive. Attorneys aren't cheap because of what we have to do. So there's a lot of working poor and people that are living paycheck to paycheck that need help, but they can't find the help. We also see that in the civil cases as well. We've heard the term civil Gideon. Gideon versus Wainwright gave us the public defender system. There's a push for some sort of representation in civil cases as well. I see people in courts all the time that need help. And while we can't make legislation and make laws, as judges, we can make sure that people that appear before us can be heard regardless of representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schulte?
Thank you. I think kind of even following up with what Mr. Reed had to say, especially in this economy with inflation and everything, you see less and less people who are able to afford attorneys and more people who are coming into court self-represented. And I think one thing the courts could do a better job of is still, even when you look at the online forms that are available, more of them could use more sort of plain English instead of legal terms. I think we could do a better job of making the court system a little less mysterious and more user-friendly and helpful to self-represented parties, which we see more and more of all the time. And again, that can be done through just simplifying some of the online forms. One example I'll use, the sort of form stipulated divorce decree online that comes to me is about 50 pages long. I have had people then hire me and say, this is too confusing. Can you do this for me? I draft up a divorce decree for them. It's 6 or 7 pages. So I think we could do a better job of sort of streamlining some processes and making people more comfortable. The other thing is access. Of course, during the pandemic, everything went to Zoom. Zoom is good because people don't have to take half a day off and find a way to get to the courthouse. But then you also have people in rural parts of this district without reliable Wi-Fi, maybe without access to the technology they need. We need to make sure we have ways to accommodate everybody, and that requires a lot of flexibility. In-person, Zoom, making sure we can craft the circumstances to the case to give everybody that access to justice that's so important.
Thank you. The next question, candidate Schulte will be first, followed by candidate Reed, Johnson, and Wallace. Okay. What factors do you think are important to consider in child custody cases?
Well, and that, of course, there's a statute that lays out what factors are important in child custody cases. They're called the best interest factors, and because I do this for a living, they're found in Minnesota Statute 518.17. And they're very expansive. There are 12 main ones. They look at things like, was there a primary caretaker of the child? Was one of the parents more the stay-at-home, change the diapers parent? They look at the mental and physical health, both of the children. Do they have any special needs, special programming? And of the parents. Are there any chemical dependency issues, physical issues that might impact the ability to parent? They look at whether there's any history of domestic abuse between the parties, which sadly is something that we see far too often. Obviously, they look at distance between the parties. You have a very different case when you have 2 parents in Duluth versus a parent in Duluth and a parent in the Twin Cities. There's a lot of custody exchanges in Hinckley on Fridays and Sundays. They look at things like whether there's any cultural, religious type of background that might impact either's ability to parent. Most importantly, what the factors are designed to do is make sure that kids are in an environment that's safe, loving, stable, and that we make decisions not based on what the parents want, but what is based on the best interests of the children. And it's one of the most important things that judges get to do.
Thank you. Candidate Reed?
And I get an opportunity to agree with Mr. Schulte this time. He's absolutely correct. The standard that we do have to apply is the best interest factors. I'm not going to go into that at greater length because Mr. Schulte did cover that. But those are the things that the judges have to consider when they're making decisions, both as to legal and physical custody questions, and it also bleeds into the issue of how we're going to handle parenting time. Ultimately, the judges have to apply those factors. They have to sit and listen to both the parties. Sometimes the children, if they're of an appropriate age, may be able to testify. Oftentimes we're hearing from guardian ad litems who represent children, if appropriate. We're hearing from other parties. And all these people are coming in and giving the judge information so the judge makes a decision. And what we're trying to do in every single case is figure out what's best. And I agree with Mr. Schulte. We're not trying to agree with one parent or another. What is best for the children involved? The one thing I think that we can do better, and we must do better in all custody cases, is we need to get to that decision as promptly as we can while taking into consideration all the evidence. Because sometimes and I'm sure we've all been involved in cases where the custody decision just languishes, and if people are waiting, well, that, like I said earlier, justice delayed is justice denied, and that applies in family law cases too. Thank you.
Candidate Johnson?
Yeah, custody cases are, it's a more emotionally charged version of every other case in the civil matter, where the court has to listen to the facts and gather evidence and documentation from the parties as well as experts, and then look at the law, and in this case it's the best interest of the child statute, that look at the various factors, weigh those factors, try to get a decision out in a timely manner so that people can move on with their lives, and try to put together a decision that makes sense and works for all the parties. That's not an easy job, and that's why, you know, it's very important that we get good judges on the bench to do this type of work. There are other issues that we've talked about that start to come into those types of cases: addiction, mental health, issues with economics and transportation, financial issues that make it very complicated, and it's important that the court try to move these cases through and listen as much as possible, but come up with the decision that works for the parties and mostly works for the child that we're concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wall, sorry, Candidate Wallen.
Mr. Schulte's right. I mean, the statute is Minnesota Statute 518.17. There are 12 factors in there. Those factors do consider the things he's laid out. I think, to echo some of my colleagues here, I think the thing that's important in considering family law cases, and they're probably, you know, the hardest cases to deal with. It's an emotionally charged area of the law. It's an emotionally charged decision. You're oftentimes making a decision or advocating and setting up, frankly, potentially the rest of that child's life by the decision you make, and that's going to have ripple effects going downwards throughout the rest of their lives, potentially the lives of their children, and even their children's children. I mean, that's the type of decision you're making, and that's how heavy that decision can be. And you have that area, you have those 12 factors to help you consider it. And I think, sure, promptness is important. I think diligence is also important. I've had many clients say, well, you know, we have to have this figured out right now, and we want to have it settled right now, and we want to know right now because, you know, my kid has to be here at 4 or at this place at 4 or whatever. And that promptness is important, but I think diligence and understanding and hearing from everybody is just as important. And I think a well-reasoned, thoughtful decision is as important or more important than a prompt decision. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a follow-up and just give you if you give me a short answer, if you want to. So what would be the most important part of that guideline? What would be the most important thing that you would look at in making that decision? Candidate Schulte.
You know, I want to be careful here because the statute actually says one factor shall not be used to the. No, and I'm not. I appreciate the question. I think one of the things with family law is every case is so factually unique, and every set of circumstances and every set of parents and every child are unique. So it's really hard to sort of pin down what the most important factor is, but I'll say, you know, the goal is always to make sure, as long as it can be done safely and effectively, to maximize contact with both parents, to not favor mom to the exclusion of dad or dad to the exclusion of mom. And that's changed. It used to be usually mom got custody, dad got weekends. That's changing very quickly and has been for quite some time.
Thank you. Candidate Reed?
And I know you asked for a short answer.
Yeah, please. I mean, I'm just, this is just,
So the short answer is yes. The factors, there is not one that's more important than the other. I think what's most important is that you're applying those factors to each case. I'll say this, there is no such thing as a cookie cutter family law case. Each case is different. They all come with their own different issues and problems. There's emotions involved right at the surface. So there isn't a particular factor. They're all important.
Candidate Johnson.
Thank you. It reminds me of a question I get every day, which is someone calls up and they say, can we do this, and gives a very kind of brief overview. And I'm always very leery of answering those questions kind of yes or no. It's never, off the cuff is not the right way to do it. The family law cases are very fact intensive. There's a lot of different factors that you need to look at. And so if I had to answer your question, I would say the best interest of the child is what I would look at. But that encompasses quite a bit.
Okay. Candidate Wallace.
I like that you asked a lot of lawyers to be brief. And in the spirit of that request, I'll say that, Mr. Schulte has the law correct. There isn't anything that's more important, as stated, than any other point, and you're not allowed to consider that any factor to the exclusion of any of the other factors, and you're supposed to weigh them all and blend it and make the best decision you possibly can. And so there isn't a good answer other than to say Minnesota Statute 518.17 is what we would all apply, and that's the job, right? Hear the facts, understand what the facts are, apply the law to the facts in that particular setting. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, and this is the last one, is going to go to Candidate Wallace, then Candidate Johnson, Schulte, and Reed. What are two cornerstones of your judicial philosophy and why?
I would say fairness, and I would say diligence. I say fairness because I can't think of anything more important to a court of law than ensuring that every party feels heard, that every argument they've made feels fairly considered. And I would say diligence because it shouldn't only feel that way, that should be the case. You should take your time, scrutinize the pleadings, scrutinize the evidence given to you, scrutinize the law, read the memorandums, consider everything that's been given to you. So to me it would be fairness and it would be diligence. I think those are the two cornerstones of my philosophy. And that would be, frankly, and that's how I've tried to operate as an attorney, be fair to my clients, be fair to the other side, and be diligent in everything that I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson?
Yes, this is a good question. Being an attorney and a judge is something of, there's some prestige to it, but it's also, and these guys can all testify to that it's a lot of hard work. And so for me, the two kind of cornerstones of my work as an attorney and my work if I become a judge will be, one, hard work and diligence. It takes a lot of work to go through, just as we talked about in family law cases, to go through all those facts, to listen to what people have to say, to hear both sides. That is hard, hard work. And you have to do it in a timely manner because we want to move justice along. We don't want it to just grind to a halt. So that's one. And the other part is the ability to listen and work with people so that they feel like this process has heard them. A decision, if I'm a judge, I'm going to make a decision one way or the other. But it's important that people appreciate the process and feel like they were listened to as they went through that process. And so that's something that will be a cornerstone of what I will bring to the court if I'm elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schulte?
Thank you. I think when I was a judicial officer, again, the idea of making sure that everybody feels like they've at least been listened to. When they ask people their impressions of the court system, a lot of times the responses they give are less about the outcome, whether they won or lost, but whether they felt like they were treated fairly, heard, and received their day in court. That's what matters. And when they're most upset is when they feel like the judge's mind was made up before they ever walked into the courtroom, even more so than the outcome of their case. And so I tried to abide by that philosophy, and I'll try to continue to do so if I'm fortunate enough to win this election. The other thing that you have to do is follow the law. Now, sometimes that sounds really simple, and sometimes the law doesn't provide a clear answer, which is why this is a hard job and you have to use some discretion. But we can't substitute what we think the law should be or ought to be. We have to apply it as the statutes are drafted and as the legislature has given us that framework, because the alternative would be something very chaotic. I'll give an example. I'm a City of Duluth hearing officer, parking violations, things like that. I had a case where somebody had parked their car on their own property in kind of a circle driveway, but it was parked on their lawn as the law defines it. And I had to uphold the fine. And I told them, I think the way this ordinance was applied here doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I can't substitute my judgment for what the law says. That's going before a different body. So those are the two biggest things for me.
Thank you. Candidate Reed?
Finally, yes, the two cornerstones that I think that I'll take to the bench and what I follow now. Number one is a sense of fairness and dignity and respect. I remember when I first came back from the Twin Cities when I was down there as a student attorney, returning here in '97, former public defender Fred Friedman pulled me aside and he said, "Shawn, I want you to remember one thing. You're no longer in the big city anymore. You're in Duluth, and we treat everybody with respect." So I thought a couple things. First of all, why is Fred telling me this? What does he think about my character that he's telling me that? But then the takeaway I took with that is, that's been my guidepost. I try to do everything I do in my workday. I'll try to do everything on the bench with a sense of dignity and treat everyone with respect, regardless of their background or if they're represented. The second part of that would be, and a lot of us, we've kind of mentioned this before, you need to listen to people. You need to effectively communicate to them. Because again, not everyone's going to win their case. But if they feel that they've been in front of a judge and they've been heard when applying the law, maybe a sense of justice will have been done. So my two cornerstones are respect and dignity, listen, communicate, and work hard.
Thank you. At this time, we will ask the candidates to each give a 2-minute closing statement. First, we will hear from, Candidate Wallace, followed by Candidate Johnson, Schulte, and Reed. Thank you.
I asked why me at the beginning of this forum. I hope in my answers today I've answered that question. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for the time here today to address people of this district as they make this important decision. A lot of buzz goes into presidential elections or congressional elections or other legislative elections. I can't think of anything really that's probably more important to a person's individual life than a judicial election and who the judge is that decides, the case, whether or not they, receive bail or pretrial release, whether or not they have custody of their children, what's the outcome of the probate of their parent or relative's estate, what happened with that quiet title action, what happened with that personal injury lawsuit. I can't think of anything that's more likely to be more impactful on a person's life than who the judge is deciding the case or controversy that's in front of them. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk a little bit about me and my qualifications and my philosophies and thoughts on some of the issues that are raised here today. And so I hope that I've answered those questions, and I would just encourage every person who sees this or hears about this to vote in the primary on August 13th and to vote again in the general election on November 5th. Thank you.
Candidate Johnson?
Thank you. So when I think about why do I want to become a judge of district court, it really comes down to public service. I opened up my statement talking about public service at the University of Minnesota Duluth when I was a young 18-year-old years and years ago. And throughout my legal career, I have found public service to be the most rewarding part of my career. I'm in my mid-50s now, and I would like to finish my career in public service as a judge in the 6th Judicial District. I have been the Duluth City Attorney for 12 years. I have worked with the Department of Justice during law school. I was an assistant Attorney General for the Minnesota Attorney General's office up on the Iron Range for 7 years. I have a lot of public service work behind me, and I've really enjoyed that and found it very fulfilling. So that's what really drives me here, is the need to, or the want to continue to serve the public. Right now, I'm in private practice. I was just thinking about what I did today, this morning. I drafted a criminal complaint. I worked on couple real estate issues, dock issues, easement issues. I responded to a personal injury matter with an insurance company. I do a lot of the work that goes before the court, and I think my 30 years of experience will be very valuable in this position. So I ask that you vote for Gunnar Johnson on August 13th, and I look forward to serving you. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schulte?
Thank you, and I again really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the voters. One of the reasons why this is such a unique and difficult job is 1 week you might be doing criminal arraignments, the next week you might be doing family law trials, the next week you might be doing civil motions, and the next week you might be presiding over your child protection calendar. You literally sort of have to be, the cliche is jack of all trades, hopefully master them as well rather than master of none, but the base of knowledge that one has to have to do this job well is fairly vast. I've been out of law school, like I said, 28 years. I've been a West Duluth resident for 23 years. I'm a proud father of 3 Denfeld graduates. I've worked for a small firm, did bankruptcy, did a little criminal defense work, did family law. I was a solo practitioner. I opened up my own practice where I really expanded into mediation and early case management, really helping people try to settle their family law disputes. I was lucky enough to work for the court system for 8 years and have seen firsthand the amazing work that they do. I was on the Equal Justice Committee for the 6th District. I was on the statewide ENE, which is a type of family law proceeding called an early neutral evaluation. I was on a statewide steering committee. Now I'm working for a little bit larger law firm. I started my career as a judicial clerk doing research for a judge, Lois Lang in Itasca County, who was the first female judge in the 9th Judicial District, which is 1 district to the west of us. So I have done a little bit of everything, which I think kind of lends itself perfectly to what a district court judge is tasked with doing on a day-to-day basis. You might have a case where you're given 5 minutes a case, 10 minutes a case. Walking that tightrope between, as we've talked about so much, making people feel heard, but running your calendar efficiently so that people aren't getting into court an hour late, which creates other problems. It's a tough balancing act, but it's one I've already successfully done and really hope to continue to do again. And again, I thank everyone for giving us this opportunity today.
Thank you. Candidate Reed?
Thank you. Again, I'm going to ask everyone to remember to mark your calendars for August 13th, as the 6th Judicial District will hold that very important election to choose the next district court judge. The last open election was held in 2010, and before that it was in 1998. So that demonstrates how rare this is. Now, despite the significance of this opportunity, there are concerns that there's going to be low voter turnout in this race. Now, in reality, a judge is going to be more likely to have a direct impact on your life than any other elected official. Your congressperson, your senator, or even your governor is not going to be making decisions that directly affect you. Judges do that. Judges make decisions that affect a person's liberty. Judges make a decision that impacts a person's daily life. Judges make decisions that impact families, and they make decisions that impact property interests. Because of that, we need judges that are experienced. We need judges that are ready to serve. We need judges who are fair and impartial. We need judges that can weigh the evidence, apply the law, and make the hard decisions. Well, I have that experience. I'm ready to serve, and I will treat people with respect and with dignity. I have weighed evidence, I've applied law, and I've made hard decisions in my career. Because of that, I'm humbly asking that you all join me and the We Need Reed campaign on August 13th and vote in this very important and crucial election. And if we didn't answer all your questions here today, I ask that you visit the website www.reedforjudge.com. And again, I thank the League for putting this together. I thank the candidates for participating with me. And most importantly, I thank you, the voters. Thank you very much.
This concludes the candidate forum for today. It is our purpose in sponsoring events such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to you. There's never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time setting such as this. If your questions were not answered, you should feel free to contact the candidates directly. We hope this helps you learn more about the candidates and issues so that you can make informed choices at the polls on Tuesday, August 13th. We thank the candidates, PACT-TV, and the viewers of this forum. PACT-TV will broadcast this forum and others. Check their listings for scheduled times. The forums will also be posted on the League of Women Voters of Duluth website, lwvduluth.org. Thank you.